kina semdol ka ke mo fa seda.
Welcome to Talking in Stations. I am Matterall. This is the Weekend Report, and we are doing a post-Christmas, post-holiday show, and we have a special guest today, which we'll announce just a second. But also, I want to say that we have some regulars, and today is going to be a very special day because we're going to do EVE Online's Most Influential Awards. We're going to announce the nominees, or at least our perspective on who they should be. And then on the 31st, we'll actually have a special show to award the winners for that contest. So today you may recognize the guy below me here. If not, he is Olmeca Gold. How are you doing, Olmeca?
Hey, how are you?
Good. Thanks for joining us. Short notice and everything. Also with us today, we have Elise Randolph off screen.
Hey, how's it going, everyone?
Hateless on screen.
Hello, guys.
And we have Caleb, who is off screen.
Hey, guys.
And of course, Maccloud in the control room is here as well.
Hello.
All right, Olmeca, let's just start with the obvious. Somebody said, I thought you quit EVE Online. You did, didn't you?
Yeah, it was at the beginning of the it was the CSM campaign, so I had to decide whether I'm going to run or not, and then I decided to not run and quit EVE due to real life reasons. My wife is due on March the 3rd, so the pregnancy is going well. So I'm just busy with spawning a co-pilot, if you will.
Well, I'm glad everything is going well, and hopefully it continues to go well. You probably made the right decision, taking time to prioritize real life. And I know you're doing some studying too, some heavy-duty scholastic work, right? Yeah,
I'm doing a PhD in philosophy. I'm trying to finish that too by the end of this academic year. So yeah, it's a hectic year. I think it was the right decision. But I'm going to come back. I'm very much involved in EVE. So I follow what's going on in patches and discussions and debates.
Yeah, we see you in there. Okay, well, before you decided to take some time off for great reasons, you were definitely something of, I don't know, an oracle or somebody who saw some of the issues in the game. You exploited some of the issues in the game, and I mean that in a good way. You took advantage of, in a smart way, some of the issues or some of the gameplay that's super high end. I even think that's primarily why you were elected, is people really got to know you when they saw what you could do with a video that you made. It was about a half hour long and showed just how advanced your gameplay was with whaling, particularly. And that swept you into office for the Council of Stellar Management a couple years ago. And since then, you've kind of been somebody on the social circuit talking about EVE Online and a really advanced voice for overall players, at least advanced players. So I'm glad that you're here to have this discussion, because we're going to talk about something that CCP just released today, and that is scarcity, and what that pathway looks like, why CCP is clamping down on the amount of ISK or treasure being put into the game in order to fix the economy that was a little bit out of control. So let's go to that first and just describe what's there. Oh, by the way, I introduced everybody, so I'm going to make sure Caleb talks in this section here, but let's talk about that. What's your impression, Caleb? Why don't you start out by, or actually, Elise, I don't know, did you read the dev blog?
Yeah, absolutely. I thought it was really interesting. Interesting is a strange word, but I thought it addressed some really important things that needed to be addressed, right? So they made note that, like, hey, as players this entire year, you guys probably have experienced some sort of reduction in income, to say the least. And they had this really very simple bar graph of a high income for last year and then like low income for this year. And they made a point to say, hey, don't worry, it's next year is not going to be all about this, blah, blah, blah. It's going to be fine. Scarcity is not the baseline, blah, blah, blah. But they didn't really say how they're going to do that or what that's even going to look like, which I think some people are very curious to know. The whole devlog, and it did have some very interesting points to it. But it did seem like whoever was writing it was like, hey, in a few hours, there's like a really nice Christmas party. So I just got to get this out the door right now. Like it did seem like hobbled together a little bit. And then they had a few slides where they kind of graded themselves on how they're doing. Economy and industry, they had it as a D, which they might as well have been an F on their scale. And they upgraded it to a C. So they're still very worried about the economy, and they're still putting a lot on it. Cheating and abuse, they had it from a B to a B, which is...
What's that mean?
It's strange because they've said how much they've done, but at the same time, they haven't upgraded that ranking. So it leads me...
Without progress, or maybe different issues came up. That's interesting.
Yeah, so that was a little bit mind-boggling to me. I wasn't quite sure how to read that. And then balance and progression, they gave themselves like a letter grade up, which I also thought was a little maybe lofty in terms of expectations. I'd be curious to know what metrics they use for this. I don't think the meta is in a bad state. Mm-hmm. But I don't think I don't think it has improved to the point where it's like a B now instead of a C. They did, through scarcity, they did pretty much remove battleships as a fleet PvP tool in terms of the meta. The meta seems to be just hacks online. Like you can, no matter where you go in EVE, you see quite a bit of hacks, especially in the nullsec like big fight that's going on, but that's not it, right? There's fights that take place through the rest of New Eden that don't make the news but are still just as important. But I haven't seen any like noticeable changes in them to merit like an improving letter grade. I don't know. That whole system seemed. I'd be curious to see how they graded themselves and self-assess themselves.
Hard metrics for something like this, it's kind of a soft metric, and that's why they use letters instead of percentages or numbers. I think it's kind of how they feel that they've progressed. So if they've made balance changes to the game to improve the balance of the game, even the developers feel that they've progressed in a meaningful way, not the actual state of the game, but they feel like they're progressing it in the right direction, I think is what that grade pertains to.
Elise, can I ask a small question?
Yeah, for sure.
Do you moonlight as a crisis consultant? Because even when you're a little bit critical, you sound so nice.
Well, the thing is, I know where this is coming from, right? So I know that this is coming from a good place. I know they want to get information out, and they either don't know the answer, but they have the idea of where it's going to be. So it does absolutely seem rushed. It doesn't really provide anything useful to me as a player. It might provide great insight to others. Though looking at the EVE Online forums, that's absolutely not the case.
Seriously, this is like the time of this whole gaming year where I really miss CCP Quant, because he would at least have put some numbers in there or given a presentation or something like that. I find the current team to be way too hands-offy, not too focused on what to put in these devlogs. Of course, I've just been binge watching lecture videos from this whole semester, revisioning. So of course I'm in a little bit of an education mode, but they need to educate their player base, because 9 out of 10 players in the game doesn't really understand what they're talking about. And you have to go all the way down to basics. Right. Like if you mine it, it's not free. It's what is a faucet? What's a sink? What's the circle of life? People still don't get it.
All right, good. Well, for people that don't get it, let's at least go back and just look at this dev blog and say what's in here. This is the EVE Online Ecosystem Outlook. Now, you've had a few of these updates over the year. And they talk about where they are as far as a healthy state. They have a graphic for that. They talk about into the future, some of the stuff they want to do. They talk about the prognosis of the ecosystem as it is now, and botting and RMT is something else they cover. But what they say in their conclusion is that 2020 has been a year of rebuilding. And so the ecosystem, as you know, have been some of the most significant news items of the entire year, because there was a transition from great opportunity and wealth for nullsec to really turning off those faucets. And that's what this dev blog is about. We're going to go around the table and do a little more analysis on it, because I think it merits it. It's the end of the year, and it's definitely the most important theme that we've had. But first, I want to introduce Suitonia, who's just come in. How are you doing, Suitonia?
Hey everyone. So I'm a bit late, just Christmas, so
Yeah.
Things are a little off.
No problem. Glad to have you here. We're going to have one more person come in and join us, and that is Ashterothi. He'll be in just a minute. Oh, there he is. How are you doing, Ashterothi?
Greetings, fellow Experience. I am Ashterothi, and I now just figured out which side is mute and which side is not mute.
All right. Love that intro. Okay, going down the list just to review, because we have a lot of people off camera. We have Ashterothi with us, Caleb, Elise, Randolph, Hateless, you can see, Maccloud's Engineering. I'm here with Olmeca, who you can see, and Suitonia is with us as well. A lot of brain power in this group. So again, we're going over the dev blog that just came out today about the EVE Online ecosystem. And we'll take it from the top, and we'll just go down. Ashterothi, have you read this yet? If not, we can skip you for now.
Nope, I just heard about it, so I'm going to look it up right now. I woke up like 10 minutes ago.
I know. It's okay. And Caleb and Elise, we heard from you. And Hateless, did you have any thoughts on this?
There's, as we go through it, I'll speak up, but there's the only thing that stuck out to me, and I know there's a whole botting part that I kind of glazed over, but is why we're saying marauders are like carriers in high risk income, because they just don't. And anyways, that's just one small little note on like what kind of made me tilt my head a little bit. Like, I'm not quite sure who wrote this.
I think their thinking is they're just a bit expensive side of ships, and then they have been trying to do this last year as well. After super and carrier nerfs and fighter nerfs, after they nerfed all those tools, there were less carriers and supers in space, and that was a problem for people who lacked targets, right? So you want stuff to be in space, so you can catch them and kill them in a healthy ecosystem as well. So what they want is introduce high risk gameplay for these bigger, more expensive tools. I think there's no dispute that marauders and carriers are more expensive than, say, a cruiser, right?
Yeah. But what I'm saying is marauders don't really fill that role like you expect them to. They're kind of in a weird spot.
It also depends on the kind of site, in the space. For example, they're great for DD sites, right? A lot of people use them for.
They've got a lot of tank, so they can deal with like the super high end PvE, but they don't really do a whole lot other than that.
They have a few things going on.
The idea is introducing environments that would make them undock, be in space, take risks, and earn good money while dying at a healthy rate as well.
Okay, we're gonna continue just getting top of the line thoughts from everybody, so everybody gets a chance to weigh in, and then we'll come back to some details. Ash, I'll come back to you, but I want to hit Maccloud first. Do you have some comments?
Yeah, in actual fact, it was something that I noticed from the graph that we showed up previously. This one, hang on, let me just pull it up on screen. So part of the issue that I have is the projected trend, especially on the economy and industry, is stable. My only concern with that is if you look at the monthly economic report, the most recent monthly economic report, you have some indices that are in a high degree of flux. Specifically, the material price index the sinks and faucets kind of thing. That sort of thing. I kind of feel like it doesn't really ring too true about the economy and industry projected trend as being stable if it's in that degree of flux.
Okay.
Well,
Ash?
it says trending towards stable, and if you look in each case, they've been also given a letter grade, and each of those letter grades have gone towards positive, right? D to C or whatever. So what I'm interpreting this as is them saying that like there is a lot of fluctuation right now. That's what change is. And
totally.
But they're moving towards a new stable. The old universe, while it was quote unquote stable in the fact that it was the way it was and was following its rules, it wasn't sustainable. So we're transitioning to a more sustainable environment.
But without numbers and without examples and without details, it's basically vague posting and basically like saying keep calm and carry on. It's like, and they don't really say anything new except for some of the promises about things to come. So they don't they still don't give us the explanation that really is needed, because people are angry because they don't understand what they're doing.
Right, but I see this as basically like, so the accusation has been that there is no plan, or that this is all just cutting, or there's all this negative feelings about the changes that have been happening in the last year, and I feel like this devlog is which I've now read, feels. Yeah, I mean, I skimmed it. You guys covered a lot, but no. What this looks like is it's basically a summary. It's designed to put it into context and help people understand all of the different things that have happened and why, without much of a preview of what's going to happen next. And this goes back to the fact that when you're doing these kinds of economic changes, the more signaling you give, the more likelihood you give the power players an opportunity to pre-adjust for your changes. And secondly, in a game like EVE Online, which is supposed to be about space and exploration and discovery, having things happen in a predetermined way or signaling things ahead of time kind of breaks up that delusion, or that illusion. And therefore, for both of those reasons, CCP has aimed away from telling us explicitly ahead of time what's happening. So we see some very vague gestures in the direction of where we're going. But a lot of this devlog is devoted to explaining what has happened.
Yeah. Elise, did you want to say something about LowSec?
Yeah, I think one of the coolest parts of the devlog, or one of the most interesting, is their views on LowSec, which they have it's just a bullet point. And it says, we want to further define the differences. Oh, wait, that's not the one. But it was something about the empires becoming sick of LowSec, or of HighSec encapsulators. And they see the semi-lawless frontier of LowSec has the potential to become much more than it is now. And also, they just added a tagline, while wormhole resources will see increased demand, which is also spooky, because wormholes generate just untold fortunes in what they are right now. But I think that one little bit about how they view LowSec is very significant. Whether or not it's going to be good or bad, who knows, right? I've got no idea what they want to do with LowSec. Right now, it's the place where you get Noxium and has faction warfare. I think that's how you would define LowSec to just an entry-level player, or just an average player who doesn't live in LowSec. Which
it does seem like they've put a lot of emphasis on LowSec with this event, right? That's where the most lucrative treasure is to discover in this game.
Events broadly, and I've talked to CCP about this. Like, generally speaking, there are some events that focus on other areas of space, but overall CCP is most happy when the event focuses on the most dangerous area of space being LowSec, or the most, like, the height of that event.
So just to put it in context, at least you might help me with this, and maybe Suitonia, but LowSec was kind of undefined or not defined well by players, say over the last 10 years. It might have been in the first 10 years of EVE Online, but in the second 10 years, going back to like 2012, it seems like LowSec didn't have a role, because really all the EVE Online sexiness was in NullSec. And HighSec was for people who hadn't discovered NullSec yet. And LowSec was kind of like put aside for a long time. Is that fair to say?
I'm gonna go cry now.
Lowsec, for as long as I've played Eve, has had all of the risk and very little of the reward of other areas of space. I think Lowsec is more dangerous to live in than Nullsec. It's spookier if you're a small group to live in Lowsec, and you just get a fraction of the bonuses and the wealth that you see all these other people getting. And this is true for as long as I've played Eve. Lowsec is one of my favorite areas of the game, just because, I guess because of that, the scale is much smaller. So I was always able to find really good, fun fights with one or two people. But you're fighting for the sake of fighting. You're not fighting to deny someone something or to take their bounties and stuff like that.
So you in Lowsec, you really can't. It's there's no way to like claim the territory, and there's no way to really enforce people coming in and out. There, you don't have bubbles. You can't really camp a gate. People can come in and out. You can get jump freighters around. You can dock up jump freighters. You do not have control of the space, and that leads to more possibility of random people coming along and shitting on you, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, and then you have groups like Snuff, right? Who are the big fish in the small pond. They're the ones that they could survive fine in Nullsec. They would be a small fish in Nullsec, but they could survive. But they've taken to, and before Snuff, you had Shadow Cartel, and you still have Siege Green. It's not just that Snuff is the power player in Nullsec, but you have these groups that like have quite a bit of power and have quite a bit of sway in their perspective or respective areas of space, and it does seem that no one can really step up against them either, because there's not enough of a lucrative thing for them. I will say one thing about and sorry, I keep rambling, but
Yeah, no, that's right.
Faction Warfare, when it first came to Lowsec, revolutionized Lowsec. It completely defined what Lowsec was. It was the place where you could get fights in Faction Warfare. I joined Faction Warfare when it first came out that summer. I had the most fun I've had in Eve probably ever, just flying around doing dumb shit because people were so interested in it. That system has been iterated on a little bit once, maybe twice, depending on how you view it. It's still, you can still roam around. You can go into novices and smalls and get a good fight. That's how I play Eve when I want to play Eve for 30 minutes and get a fight, I'll go roam around in Lowsec Faction Warfare space. But that's kind of it.
It's funny that you mentioned 2012 specifically, because that was the year of the Inferno patch, and therefore the entry, the beginning of the golden age of Faction Warfare, and my time in Faction Warfare. So from like 2012 to 2016, Lowsec was actually extremely active because Faction Warfare was really enlivened, and then a series of things, Citadels and whatnot, kind of slowly eroded the Faction Warfare people's will to continue to engage with the systems. And as I said, even back then, as Faction Warfare lives and dies, so too does Lowsec live and die. But what I see here in this economic report is the idea that they're really leaning into the idea of different areas of space are a resource for different things, and therefore you have to go to those different areas of space to get those things. The thing that stands out to me is actually the wormhole comment, because wormholes have actually lost a lot this year. They've lost most of its mining. They've lost a whole bunch of the money-making capabilities, and even just the basic like living kind of things that you need, like tritanium, is very, very difficult in wormholes, especially deeper wormholes now, because you can't jump freighter into wormhole. Mm-hmm. So this idea that they're going to be leaning into what comes out of these places, right? So now the production of T3 materials or whatever will be much more available and or valuable out of wormholes. So they're getting away from kind of the generic, everybody can just suckle up on the generic teats of industry, and more towards each section, each area, each aspect of the game has very specific things that they have to offer to the market.
They need value. Every region of space needs to have value. And another thing that they mentioned in this that's in line with that is that they mentioned that they want certain regions to have a specific thing that they're known for, a specific thing that comes out of them, so that we have, this space is valuable because it provides this resource. This space is valuable because it, not just in security, but like in regions as a whole, this region of space provides this resource to players. So this the people who control this basically get to name the price.
Or opportunities. Like this is something that we saw. We saw this in in Moons originally. So, like for instance, before there was an Imperium, before there was all of the different wars that we've had recently, there was Technetium and OTEC, which was an agreement between the different people because all of the Technetium in the world basically came out of this one area of space. And so by controlling that one area of space, you could control the price of all T2 industry in the game. Obviously that got broken up, and it's one of the reasons why we have distributed stuff nowadays, so that way that won't happen. But the point is that like there are other ways of making regions different from one another. A good example of something that's happened recently is the drone regions. The drone regions have connections to Poshfin. The rest of nullsec doesn't. So now if you are in drone lands that has access to a whole different universe of sites and opportunities and logistical opportunities, et cetera, that the rest of nullsec doesn't. So that's the kind of thing that I suspect that they would do to make it so that different regions are different. Maybe Sancha has done something in the Stain region, which allows you to now get something there that you wouldn't be able to get elsewhere.
All right. So again, we're talking about some of the future stuff that CCP is looking into. We talked about low-sec being an area where they want to give more value for playing there in those areas. Now, when I talked about 2012, Ash, it's funny, your response was, hey, that was a golden age of faction war, and it was, and you're right, that was kind of an oversight. But I still think of 2012 as kind of an entry point for players that would skip over nullsec because they would be dragged into a group like a Test or a Brave, or later on they get dragged into groups like Horde or Karma Fleet, and just overall just skipping low-sec as a place to live and a place to do things. Same with wormholes as well. But let me ask somebody who dwelled in low-sec a lot, Suitonia and Olmeca. You guys are both familiar with that. Suitonia, do you have any thoughts on low-sec and how it's different now than it was a few years ago?
Yeah, it seems like CCP is trying to like add things to low-sec that historically you just completely skipped over. Like mining was one of them, right? You were a complete idiot if you mined in low-sec, like outside of like R64s generally, because you could mine the same ores, if not better, in nullsec, and you have all of the extra security and the infrastructure that nullsec allows, like the sov upgrades, like being able to control your space using dicta bubbles, being able to use caps a lot easier without having like worrying about dread bombs as much, because in low-sec you can see dreads in basically any NPC station, so it's super easy to do it. And so now it looks like CCP adding mining opportunities there. Be interesting to see if they do something else with like exploration. I mean, the new event sites have been great because I feel like they've really got the risk reward balance right with them, where you have like high sec as like the lowest risk but the lowest rewards, and nullsec as like medium risk, medium rewards, and then low-sec as the best risk or highest risk, and best rewards. Because like in the past, right, the only reason to really do any kind of PvE in low-sec was to abuse level 5 missions or to do FW missions, and both of those are generally run in a way where you can minimize as much risk as possible.
Olmeca, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's important to note that at least the contribution I can make to this discussion is that it's hopeful that other like stars align for low-sec right now. What I mean by this is that CCP has a few generic themes of what they want to do, and these kind of like overlap over low-sec right now. For example, the one thing is that they want to introduce diversity, as you discussed. Like every region has their own specialized thing. That's not just a low-sec vision. That's just an Eve vision, where every region gets their own thing, and they get to trade or they get to fight over it, and so on and so forth. So this is supposedly going to create interaction, right? And then I say supposedly, but I sort of agree with this vision. The second thing is, last year we have seen a lot of NPE improvements, and we actually see the results right now in logged in like online counts and so on, right? So a lot of the high online count Eve has experienced last year, a lot of people will attribute some of it to COVID, but actually there were MMOs who lost players during COVID. So I don't think it's just that. The MPE improvements were great, and I've seen firsthand the statistics and how the improvements kind of came alive in player counts. And CCP was focusing on the first, say, few hours of the gameplay, and then they were focusing on the first few days, and then for first few months. And at some point, there comes a point where a new player wants to get out of high sec and do something else. And I think CCP thinks that low sec, particularly faction warfare, is a great place for that. Instead of, I mean, I'm not going to say instead of, but at least as an alternative to major sec, new player-friendly organizations. The faction warfare is a casual way of going into PvP and also being in their organizations without having to deal with so many timers and CTAs and so on and so forth. And so they have done the very early gameplay improvements, and we're experiencing the player counting improvements for that. And now I think the time is beginning to come for that time where they're going to focus on what the new player will do once they want to PvP. And that's faction warfare, I think, for CCP.
Ash, go ahead with the correction, and then we'll...
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of be pedantic. Elise mentioned that there has been basically no faction warfare changes, but actually there's been several improvements to faction warfare in the last year or two, several key significant improvements that we asked for years. But the difference is that these were released with relatively little fanfare and in piecemeal. So while there has actually been a lot of the problems in faction warfare fixed, A, not all of them, and B, they've been gone kind of under the radar.
But they also got rid of gate sliding too, right? So like, I don't know.
Well, they put it back in.
As a system, it hasn't. They put a modified version of it in, right? But as a system, it hasn't been like fully iterated on. When you're talking about,
there hasn't been like a 3, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. This is the faction warfare patch.
So that's something that I hope we see, and I don't want to read into this and get my hopes up, because that would be just setting myself up for crying later. But that's something that I hope to see, right? Because Olmeca makes a really good point about, especially with the new player experience, the route really should not be in high sec for a couple weeks, join Horde, join Karma Fleet, join Brave, welcome to Eve. That shouldn't be the route. That should be a route that you can be able to take, but that shouldn't be the best route for you. I think that's part of the reason how we got into this problem, by just populating nullsec with just players who are loosely attached to certain groups at the start, and then like they're brought in, promised of riches, and then they stay because like they made friends along the way, which is good, but that shouldn't be the only / best way to do it. So I'd really love to see a system like faction warfare get some more love, because Olmeca and Ashterothi can attest to this. This is where you can get interested in PvE or PvP if you want. You can risk a little bit more if you want. And you can create like social structures and join social structures where you're with like 5 or 6 other people, or you're with 30 or 40 other people. You're not one of 1,000 sitting in a group or something. So I'd like to say that, but or I'd like to see that, but I'm not getting my hopes up. But
sorry.
Oh no, go.
My personal experience was that I started Eve in 2008. I went into a nullsec rental empire, because that's where my real life friends were. And it was super boring, and I left and came back 4 or 5 years later and went to low sec and faction warfare, and that was the time I actually stayed. So I can attest to that.
Where you had fun. Well,
yeah,
I wanted to move into something you said, Olmeca, and that was new players coming to EVE Online, and we'll just have a discussion on this. I'll try to distribute time as well as I can, but feel free to talk. And that is something I like to talk about is new players coming into the game. First, they start out at the top of the funnel where they just get interested in the game. Then they actually log into the game for an hour and then they quit. And CCP removing that problem where people quit in the first hour. And now they play to the second hour, and then the third, and then the 12th, and then the second day, and then the week. And CCP is constantly removing or improving areas so that they don't quit after 12 hours or 2 days or something like that. So we're getting new players coming in. Is that offsetting players leaving? Like, why haven't we seen a giant tidal wave?
I would say we did. I would say we did have a lot of improvement last year with online counts. And so how it works is you won't believe the kind of things they showed us in CSM where, super technical details that cause like 3-4% of players just dropping out, right? Like just a user interface issue or like a bug or something like a mission would get stuck and those kind of things. And they kept improving one by one, little bit by bit, and it's playing out in a way that, they showed us the new player slice. So for example, a new player comes and the retention is higher now. For example, instead of say 10% of, I'm just making up numbers, 10% of all players staying in the game, now it's 11%. But then that 11%, if they remain in the game for 1 year, 2 years, that 1% improvement increases our overall online count at the end of the 3-year period by a lot, because many of the players in EVE currently online are 5 years or 4 years old players, right? So the more we add on them, the more higher layer of the cake will become bigger and bigger, right? So it takes time. Like even if you improve new player experience today, say seeing improved numbers, particularly just the only publicly available number, which is the concurrent users, right? Seeing that number rise can take 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. But eventually, if you do the simulations that Hilmar did and showed us, you get to a point where you get a lot of increase over time in player amounts.
Yeah. This is actually critical because a lot of people think about like EVE is a hard game to get into, and by that it means it takes a lot of time, right? Like it often takes some time for somebody to stumble upon the thing that is going to interest you, or a lot of times player retention relies on a specific kind of player interaction, and so the longer people are out there playing the game and doing stuff and having an opportunity for an interaction, more likelihood that will happen and that person will become retained. And so it isn't just a matter of them playing the game for 2 hours or 2 days. We have to keep them invested in the game long enough for that thing to happen, whatever that thing is that excites them and hooks them into the game. The more and longer you can keep them engaged, the more likelihood it is that they will find their place in the universe.
So I call it knowing what you don't know. So once you know what you don't know in EVE, then you have a target, right? I want to know how to become an AFK cloaker. And then that takes 5 months or a year as a project. And there it is. Your 1 year in EVE is guaranteed as a customer.
So EVE Online is kind of notorious for this, but they don't provide you with a why to play the game. They just kind of say, here's a sandbox, go play. And it's kind of difficult to find a reason to stay in the game if you don't have a why. You will definitely want to stay if you have a reason to play the game. Oh, my friends are online, so I may as well go play with them. Like that's a why. There's not really a why in the game. Like you could say, well, I like making ISK. That's kind of a why too. Or I like killing people. That's kind of a why. But at the same time, why am I invested in this game instead of something else that I can go play? And I think that finding that why is very key to retaining players and making potential whys a little bit more easy to find, if that makes sense, would be a good idea.
One of the interesting things about all of this, and Olmeca touched on it as well while he was on the CSM, he saw the fruits of the NPE project and how new players are being retained and how the numbers look great. I think a lot of that has really emboldened CCP to make the design changes that they've been making this year. I'm sure there are there's absolutely other factors that play into it, but that's got to be one of them. When they're like, well, we're no longer afraid that our game's going to die if we make this change, and this change, because we have all these new guys coming in. This is going to be the Eve that they know. They won't be relying on what they knew or what the game used to be and stuff like that. So at least for me, when I try and look, I guess holistically at the changes that CCP has made to Eve, it really is. We're not afraid of veteran players. We're willing to take the risks that we might not have been willing to take last year, or the year before, or 5 years before. So that's an interesting little take on this.
Yeah, that's very relevant because a lot of arguments against things like scarcity, for example, they are grounded on what players currently have. People say, well, a lot of people have Titans and Supers, and now you're making them more expensive, and then you're putting a ladder between the newcomers and the veteran players who have Titans. But then CCP takes a look at how many new players are coming in, and they think they're wanting to make changes that's gonna determine the next 10 years of Eve. And when we are talking about 10 years of Eve, what's the current veteran players have right now is not a good argument anymore, right? Because you cannot predict who is going to be where and which organization, or who is going to be playing still, who is not going to be playing still in 10 years. But in 10 years, these new players won't have experienced the scarcity. The scarcity is a veteran problem, right? Because they never knew the abundance, right? So I totally agree. For similar reasons, CCP is a bit more empowered, and this is with COVID increase also. This has been, I think, a good year to do these changes, I think, because it's obvious that they're going to create some turmoil and some disagreement, and because people were used to doing things the old way. But I think the COVID, I'm not going to say COVID is good, but the increase with COVID has been helpful to mitigate some of the negative things came from with these updates.
In fact,
I think this is slightly. Yeah. I think it's slightly. Sorry to say this, but I find what I'm hearing is a little bit knee-jerk reactions and claims that are not real. Right? Unless you start deleting stuff in the game, old stuff matters. Right? Inherited wealth and old wealth matters massively. So this whole thing about, well, we can just design for a new breed of players, it's just not true. It's not how this game works. Of course, you can say, well, let's CCP start making this game like any other MMO or any other casual game that usually has a longevity of 1 or 2 years. That's fine. I wouldn't. I'd be fine with that, because right now I've lapsed my account and I'm halfway out the door because the simulation is dead, and the seriousness of fixing the simulation seems to get further and further away. Even with dev blocks like this, I am not seeing or hearing what I would call sane ecological and economic arguments, because this requires a level of understanding that usually leads to a lot of people screaming at Dirk McGurk when he's drunk, right? Something as fundamental as things like inflation, something like faucets and sinks being balanced in a carrying capacity sort of way, things like farming and resource gathering being more like actual real world farming with limitations and requirements of building up your infrastructure and all these things. Every time these things get discussed in what I would call a meaningful way, I just hear this, oh, it's just a game and fun per hour, and all of these hilarious arguments like, okay, destroy this game. The academics already fucked off because it's not interesting anymore. We don't have serious people trying to manage the eco stuff like Quant. Of course, I'm not going to poo-poo on Ratati and his team. It's just I don't feel that seriousness. It feels like a degradation from a professional PhD economic professor to a professional banker, quant specialist to now. Well, what?
It doesn't really take a PhD to understand a few problems. They're very, I think, widely accepted as well. Like inflation is bad, and ore inflation is bad as well. So if you keep pumping ore so much and there is not enough destruction,
but it's not.
Bad as well.
Inflation is not bad if you're trying to solve ancient wealth. Then inflation is actually just what you need. It's just that if inflation is not done right, it will break the mold. It's what I meant when I say. And you do need a PhD to understand this game if you want to understand it in detail. That is what it requires.
I'm referring
I don't think it should require that.
Inflation. Of course, you need some sort of inflation.
But let's let Olmeca respond, and then I'll redirect.
Of course, you need because player counts increase, their time in the game increase, they will want more money. So of course, you need some level of inflation. It's just if you keep pumping into the game, if you keep pumping onto the game, the stuff becomes less valuable. And imagine take like high-sec missions, they have fixed bounty rewards, right? And then if someone else in nullsec or a lot of people pumps money into the economy, then my mission will become less valuable, right? So those are the fundamental balances that the game is hinged on. And then the diagnosis was that there was, at least for the ore part, there was a lot of ore coming into the game, and then they wanted to address that. And then a lot of people said, okay, but how about people who farmed before these balance updates? They have a lot of money and they have a lot of titans, and now we don't. But then what I want to say is, I think that's a knee jerk response, because when you think about the next 10 years of EVE, yes, the titans, the supers people have, they matter, but not as at a greater degree that you think they do, right? Because in 10 years, who really knows what's going to happen in 10 years? So at the other end, we do want to have an EVE that's in which the ore input in the game and output in the game, or output, is closer than before these updates, right? So because we all have seen this. I mean, I don't know, maybe you disagree, but I think that inflation caused a lot of stagnation since 2016, basically.
Okay, my point is that everybody should be able to pick up a keyboard and mouse and play EVE Online. I think that there is...
I was talking about the devs. I was not talking about players requiring PhDs. I was talking about the fact that the dev team needs a skill base that is high enough to actually understand the complicated game that they have. Of course, we should not. We should be able to play this with an 8-year-old just mining. That's fine. I'm just saying, if you want to develop this and fix this game, you really need to understand what's going on.
Caleb, for 8-year-old enslavement as miners. I will say this, Caleb.
Olmeca is already producing one. He said so earlier.
Yes, I know. There's a lot of EVE players with kids that are slave miners. Know that.
Devs need to understand the game. That
isn't in this late stage. The idea. Hold on, Hateless, you're unsynced for some reason. But did I cut out? Okay. Let me move this closer. One of the things is that you need to make it manageable for new players to kind of keep up with this entrenched wealth. Well, the biggest, am I lagging out?
You're roboting a little bit.
You're fine. A little bit.
All right. I'll change to a push to talk, and that'll give me a little more command over my sound. How's this?
Yeah, sounding good.
Sorry about that. All right, good. So what I was getting at was maybe, Caleb, they're not trying to necessarily fix the system. It would take too long to fix the system, for old wealth to drain out, to stockpiles to drain out, even with this war, because we have graphs that show us that people aren't fighting in capital isn't happening. At least the super capital reduction isn't happening because people are parking them. They don't want to lose them. They know they're valuable. They cost more now. But maybe what you need is for people to leave the game, which is the biggest delta of money leaving the game. And even for players that leave the game and the game is still the wealth is still parked, they are donating that back into the cause, like the Imperium, right? Picking up older wealth from players that aren't even playing the game anymore. They're saying, all right, well, spend my money even though I'm gone from the game. But there are players that disappear from the game and aren't giving up their wealth. And that's taking more money out of this economy than anything else.
Let's be very clear. The number of Titans in the game impacts a new player the amount that the price of tea in India affects somebody in Australia, right? Like this is not a real issue. And this is part of the problem, is that we as experienced players think my experience has something to do with the new player experience. But the new player is like, wow, space, there's cool stuff. I don't know how to warp. What's that thing? Oh my God, I'm dead. What do I do now? What's low sec? Oh, I've been killed. This game's not fair. Like these are the things that they're worrying about. They're worrying about frigates. Like they may look at a Titan and dream about it someday. But the mere fact that the issue is it's an expectation inflation, right? When the standard is supercarrier ratting, it was said earlier, when supercarrier ratting is pouring ISK into the economy, then missions are worth less, not because they give less ISK, but because that ISK reward, they're taught that that's not cool, right? It's not cool to get 20 million ISK per hour doing missions because you could be making 100 million ISK per hour. So what are you doing? You're a fool. And so what we're really seeing is a change in making sure that new players have activities that are rewarding on their scale, which is incredibly important. And to the point of like whether or not this is going in the right direction, all I'm going to say is this is the reason why during the fireside chat, my number one takeaway was that this doesn't sound like a people that have been working on this for a year and now regret what they've been doing, right? Like these are the people that are watching the metrics, that have goals and plans, that are seeing the numbers and understanding what is happening far better than us. And they came to us after a year of doing some of the most dramatic changes that Eve has seen, and they seem pretty freaking smug about it. That's all I know.
Just to throw this to Olmeca with his PhD, how exactly Ashes and Olmeca is this different from real life? The same behavior is true for 18 or 19-year-olds when they start college and start out on life, or when they try to aspire for getting their first Porsche, or becoming some millionaire in a city boy in London. It's like, why do you guys assume that this game should be different than real life? This is exactly what real life is like.
Because there aren't people running around going, no. If you're not in a Porsche, then you're not driving. Here, let me come out over here and hack the whole system so that way you can get your Porsche and then drive around and be bored because you never actually did any of the other driving.
I'll show you how to create a Porsche. This is how you build one.
I do believe
like this.
I do believe there is that kind of situation occurring. It's just you need to be in the right social circles and going to the right private schools. Let's put it that way.
I mean, my answer to that is that a game is a business, and they like CCP is there to make money. And when the game stagnates because too many people have Titans and they don't fight, because owning one is an accomplishment, but you really don't want to lose one. You didn't buy one to lose one, right? So, but that when that situation, particularly with the old OP stats and of capitals. That situation creates stagnation to everyone's fun, and less people log in, less people, and also like there's less and less time between the moment you join Eve and the moment you get a Titan, because skill injectors, because money, everyone, like all the nullsec empires recruit people and bring their people to nullsec, and then they farm their way up to 5th Rorqual and then to a Titan. And then what happens? What happens is exactly the situation Maccloud is in. If you have seen that episode of Meta Show, it's like Hilmar, he was like, Hilmar was talking about Titans. Where is my Titans? He's out of things to buy because he's playing to buy things. But that gameplay, while it's legitimate, it also has an expiration. Once you have every asset you want, that gameplay ends. So EVE is better. It's more sustainable when we focus on things to do with our assets rather than buying assets, right?
Yeah.
And then CCP has been trying to do exactly that. They have been trying to increase the amount of small gang, everyday roaming, like ESSs, the filaments, right? The activity, just hopping into the activity at that level. They haven't been designing Titans. They haven't been designing merge 30 super capitals into a bigger super capital. It's not a theme park MMO where they can just keep adding to new ships and new content and keep you going every year. It's not a theme park. Michael Chen wanted to play a theme park in that meta show. And he said, CCP, why don't you just print money so everyone is happy? But EVE doesn't work like that. EVE is a sandbox. It is grounded on very key economic balances that need to be maintained by CCP. And one of those balances is ore input and output. And that's what the scarcity was about.
That's a really good point, Olmeca. I just want to emphasize that CCP seems to be designing for experiential aspirations as opposed to possession aspirations. Very interesting.
I mean,
this goes back to what we were saying earlier about 2012 and that whole era, which is that so back then we fetishized the whole idea of players must teach players how to play EVE. That is the way to do it. And so it was seen that when you're in HiSec, you're basically just there until you get recruited into Karma Fleet or into one of these other organizations in nullsec that will teach you the quote unquote real EVE. But the problem is that when that is the philosophy, right? When all of the carrots, all of the major goals are out there, and then the player base kind of reinforces this mentality, what that does is it actually extremely limits the scope of what is seen as acceptable behavior outside of that. And so you see things like dismissal of faction warfare, dismissal of wormholes, because that doesn't support the nullsec empires, which are the ones that are recruiting the people and teaching the people, and that's the aspect of the game that is getting the most focus and attention by the player base, and therefore derivatively by CCP. But what ends up happening is that creates an increasingly two-dimensional view of the game, where now things like Titans are seen as some sort of end goal because it's just a better version of everything else. Whereas before, when a new player came in and was like, I want to be in a Titan, you're like, well, you don't though. Let me explain why. That has changed. And so it started to increasingly kind of collapse into this one path of progression of what EVE is, which is frightening considering how beautifully intricate and interesting EVE actually is. So even today we hear everybody's doing this, everybody's doing that. But when I go out and fly around, I find people doing the craziest stuff, things that are counterproductive, things that are just creative, things that have nothing to do with ISK or some sort of goal that you would expect. Because as you said, it's a sandbox. And the more that we disrupt these well-worn paths that we have created for ourselves and force each other to go on and disrupt the lies that we tell each other about what is or isn't fun in the game, the more we give people the opportunity to find their own fun. And it turns out the more fun, the more interesting, intricate, and textured EVE itself becomes.
So I kind of feel like there is a bit of a kind of mixing of two different kind of mindsets here. Obviously, you guys are talking, especially Ash, you're talking very much on the from the perspective of the the single player who's trying to find good and interesting content in EVE Online, and that's completely fine and understandable. But when you're trying to define owning a Titan in that particular with that particular kind of perspective, it doesn't really work, because there's not really a true reason why you'd want to own a Titan as a lone single player. The entire idea of owning Titans, the entire idea of your friends and your kind of community and that kind of thing, pushing you to owning a Titan, is because it's a strategic asset that helps the defense of the realm.
Ugh, I'm so tired of hearing about
This is similar. This is similar to people that would claim that they are entitled to have personal guild halls in other games. Like these other games usually make these communal features only available for communal play. That's what Titans was supposed to be.
Yeah, Billy.
Spoiler alert: flying a cruiser is more fun. Change my mind.
Billy
totally.
Billy says something interesting here. He says, crazy, I used to be able to solo mine a Titan in 6 days. Okay, something's broken. And he's not the only one that could do that.
Well, yeah, but like
anyway,
you were never... There was never a reason to own multiple Titans aside from the fact that it increased your group's ability to defend your own space. Like,
Well, so
Right, and
defending your space, particularly when it comes to timers and so, is one thing. Defending in your space, where when it comes to defending it from small gangs and everyday warfare, is another. And Titans were being used before the umbrella changes to gate boson things, to basically they were one of the best ways to kill an interceptor fleet by just bosoning the gate. If they want to warp. I lost a lot of my excavator busher pontifexes to gate bosoning Titans. So before the boson changes, owning a Titan was an everyday daily thing for some of these big alliances, where you undock it daily, you drop it daily to random unsuspecting subcaps, or maybe they're suspecting, but and I agree
yeah,
that
but that's
they
not its
should
primary purpose, though.
I agree
Right,
that
but-
it shouldn't be, but it was.
it became the correct answer, and that's the problem. Is that like I said, originally somebody would be like, "Oh, Titans are big and cool, and I want them," and then you'd be like, "Well, actually, in Eve, like Titans are more of a niche thing. So yeah, it's something to build towards, but it's like only if you want to use it for these specific things. Whereas once you have the capital and super capital change, you see this thing where it's like basically the apex ship. And again, what this does is it actually collapses possibility space. There's no more room for other ships and comps and fleets and stuff like that, when basically 4 ships are just the better version of everything else.
Right.
Yeah,
we
I mean,
could go.
happened in like 2018, right? It's because like the way you win Sov is to have the most Titans. How do you get the most Titans? You have the most Rorquals, and you blew up every single region around you, so those Rorquals can always mine safely. And then you drop those Titans on small gangs, because Titans were the best answer to small gangs coming into your space. So then you can mine more Titans to get more Titans, so you can win the war, right? That's basically how Norsec played in 2018, 2019.
And the problem is, and this is the death. This is what happened to Losec, right? It wasn't just citadels. It wasn't just faction warfare stagnation. This is it, because this is what has prevented me from being able to go into re-push into Losec. And it's simple. You can't build supers in Losec, which means either you have to have some other area of space. I now have to have sovereignty in order to project into Losec, which is bizarre, because if I do anything in Losec, I'm going to get dropped on by supers, but I can't build supers because I don't have sovereignty. So I have to have sovereignty in order to own Losec, which is
All right.
wrong.
All right. It's interesting, and we'll just leave it at this, that supers were used in a way they weren't really meant to be used, and that goes for PvP, but it also goes for PvE. There was a time where it was absolutely and it wasn't that long ago, absolutely scandalous to be ratting in a dreadnought. It was unheard of. It was what they say in England, taking the piss. Like, you're not supposed to do that sort of thing. And that became the norm, if not even more extreme. But we got to move on to a different subject.
2015, just to zero it in, 2015, I remember there was a policy that if you ratted in a carrier in Providence, you were kicked out.
Yeah. Well,
Yep.
yeah. Okay.
That's the difference.
Yeah, they used to be valuable assets. Anyways.
Next topic, real quick, and this kind of tags along. That we know there's a war going on right now. They're entering a new phase of actually destroying keep stars in Delve. We saw one go down in NOL TAC M9, a classic system in EVE Online. Had a keep star in it. The iHub was replaced by a Pappy iHub, and it lasted 35 days, allowing a Sino jammer to be put in place. And the Keepstar was subsequently killed without any defensive fleet trying to defend it, because the Sino jammer keeps out escalation pathway for the defending Delve resident.
So when the Delve clock or when the Doom clock ticks down, does it go bong?
Sorry, breaking up.
Was that me? Or you? I'm sorry. I was just making a joke.
Is it me breaking up?
You were breaking up.
All right. Sorry. One of us was breaking up, and I think it might have been me. So, Elise, where are we now with the war? And I've just heard on the fireside chat from the Imperium that the war bonds are actually happening. Like they're actually a thing.
I mean, it makes sense, right? Yeah, you're giving. I mean, I would want if I were in the Imperium, if I could give some of my money to make more money and also help out my team. Given that I have just like Scrooge McDuck piles of money laying around, I would absolutely do that, right? EVE Online is still a very complicated economy where money does make more money. It's as simple as that. So being able to pool this all into one group, giving one group like trillions of ISK to play with, they could absolutely dominate markets. They can make money in very inventive ways. You're talking about the people that are playing this game now. A lot of them they're not college students. They're not high school students. These people are young professionals or professionals and experts in their field. You have actual bankers in these positions of power that can do a lot of cool things. So I think that makes a lot of sense. Obviously, there's also the notion that you have to put in these quantum cores, which is a very expensive one-time thing to put in these keep stars. That does take a huge chunk out of your war bonds, right? So you don't want to have a little blip there. So it's a double purpose. So, I mean, that makes a lot of sense. I know the Imperium are viewing, they kind of viewed December as a mulligan in a way, because it did seem like, to them, it seemed like Pappy were more or less playing for this moment after January, where all of these citadels would need to have a core in them if they want to be used, or if they want to have tether, actually, because that's pretty much the big thing. If you don't have a quantum core, you don't have tether. That's it. Tether refit.
Tether fitting and a repair.
Repairing, but the important part is the tether. So they kind of viewed December as a mulligan. Obviously, they still had a lot of success in what they were doing. I think they were more successful in December than any other month in the conflict in terms of what they achieved. We mentioned the Null Keepstar went down without a fight. The Keepstar itself, the final timer of the Keepstar did go down without a fight, but that does not mean that there weren't fights in Null over the objectives there. There were always fights over that iHub. That jammer there was a screw up with the jammer that the Imperium kind of forced. There are some timers that were in Curse and Null at the same time. Like 2 timers were created at the same time to kind of force Pappy into making a decision. Yeah.
Real quick, I just want to specify, because you keep saying Null, which is N-O-L, a specific system, and not null as in null regions in general.
Yeah, Null M9, which is it's kind of like the crown jewel of Delve in a sense.
Yep, that was it. Just keep going.
Yeah, so I mean, it's December, I think, has been very good to the Imperium. I think Pappy have been playing it slow the last couple weeks because they have been just methodically burning down other areas of space. They do know they like set the tone for their members that, hey, we live in T5Z right next to 1DQ. It doesn't mean we're invading 1DQ tomorrow. So they're just kind of focused around there, focused on burning stuff. The initiative's deployment has been a great success as of late. Bastion's deployment really has also been kind of a thorn in the side to some people. In reality, Bastion, I think, paved the way and showed the initiative. And I'm sure the initiative's not going to like this, but I think they did show the initiative the way that, hey, you can go in the back lines and make some timers and have a lot of success.
Are you trying to, Elise, are you trying to say that the Bastion took the initiative from the initiative?
Yep, that's where I was going. But yeah, no, I know those two groups have been like all stars. If the Imperium has like a gold star system, I would give gold star to the initiative, gold star to the Bastion for this month, right? Their refrigerator should get peppered with stickers. But yeah, no, it has been slow. Come January, I think there's going to be a lot more structures destroyed. I think the intensity is going to heat up again. You're talking about thousands of dreads were lost in Delve in October. Very few in December. I mean, there still were some, but like very few comparatively. So I think that's going to pick up again as these doom clocks start ringing and ringing and ringing. Again, just the nature of the strategy that Pappy has been enforcing is, hey guys, we're going to take these iHubs, we're going to hold and control these iHubs until we get to a solve level to put in the jammer, and then we're going to systematically destroy the keep stars. That does mean that the fights become much smaller because by virtue of fighting over iHubs, you can't have these huge set piece battles. Like that's not how Sov works in this current Sov system. So you are seeing a ton of everyday skirmishes or daily skirmishes with like 30 plus people. I think people have been having more fun on both sides of this conflict than during the battles that made it to the Guinness World Records or whatever. And I think you're just going to see more of that.
I think this is evidence that everything that we've been talking about has been working out, though, because like if this had been going on exactly a year ago with none of the changes from this year, then it would just basically boil down to Apex battle fights all the time. Because why wouldn't you just drop a bunch of Titans? But because of all of the changes that have happened, that question has an answer. So there are times where it's appropriate to drop a whole bunch of Titans, and there are times where it's appropriate to drop a whole bunch of hacks.
And to put it in escalation theory terms, I think that this is what CCP wanted to achieve. And I think really in particular in CSM 14 was great in educating CCP how these chains work. So you get a subcap fleet and you drop capitals on it, and you can drop dreads on capitals, and then you can drop titans on dreads and so on. But then the prognosis was that the Titan and Super Blob was an answer to every single situation on grid. So you just skip the last end of the escalation chain, and that was broken. And CCP specifically tried to address that, but not only ecosystem team, but also CCP Rise and Team Talos. And then I think they've been quite effective. Except maybe now that we're looking for some kind of purpose for supers and so on, and then they try to mitigate that with I don't know what's the name of this thing that you spawn about.
The VAT, isn't it the VAT clone bay or something?
Yeah, they try to mitigate, but I thought this. I mean, I try to think the ways to give purpose back to supers, but I couldn't come up with a better idea. And I think, well, VATs are not great as well, but I don't know. Maybe that problem remains, but they specifically address that, and the chain issues are no longer huge. At least there are still missing links in the chain. They've been talking about since 1 or 2 years now. They've been talking about the anti-capital subcap. Maybe in this climate it's bad to introduce it now, but yeah, that's, for example, one of the other unsolved or like that's a link in the chain that's not added to the game yet that they want to add at some point.
Yeah, so about a year ago, they were talking about introducing a heavy bomb that would be a specifically capital super capital anti-bomb that would be deployed on some other ship, either like a battlecruiser or a battleship. But obviously, that hasn't manifested in any way yet.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be a heavy bomb. It's just the solution in general is just a subcap solution against supers and titans, or maybe carriers even.
Yeah, and this goes back to what I said even back when Titans were really, really strong, which was that like if cruisers can't threaten a Titan, then nothing threatens the Titan because a hack is.
Are we back on Titans?
Maybe.
If I hear Titans one more time. Actually, I got to run. Elise is going to take over the hosting. We will see you later. I can't wait to hear what you guys think about Most Influential. I'll be listening, but I got to run. Elise,
welcome to Talking in Titans.
So I do want to say, look, we're going to quickly move over because we got some time. We've got a Most Influential of the Awards, Influential of the Year nominations to go through, and then on the 31st or the 1st, I believe it's the 31st, Talking Stations, we're going to have a special show where we announce the winners, and hopefully have some of them on. Hopefully they'll want to come on. But as far as the dev blog is concerned, I think we're going to just quickly put a pin in it. I will say, just to end it out, I think CCP probably needs a new catchphrase, because if I see abundance breeds complacency and scarcity brings war, if I see that one more time, I think I'm just going to lose my mind, because I think it's just bad marketing. I don't like it. They need to refine that. They can make it something like space is the unknown, go find the unknown again. I don't care, but just get rid of that. That's my like crucial input to CCP from this dev blog. But moving on, I want to go
make
to
it winners requires losers.
yeah,
that would be great. Actually,
works. Right now everyone's a loser though. So anyways, so the most influential awards, we have a couple subcategories. Most influential player, most influential group, most influential moment that like happens in the game in 2020, the most influential mechanic change. I think there's a clear winner on that one. Hopefully we'll be able to have that mechanic on the show. And then the most influential game change. And we've gone through our staff and compiled a list, or at least started to compile a list. Arcia is not here, but she actually had a pretty great one. I know Maccloud has one. And so we're just going to go around and go through quickly some of these. They don't have to be like super in depth, but we will publish, I'm sure, our full list of nominees from all the personalities. And you can chime in too in our Discord. You can join the Talking Station Discord and chat about it as well. So that'll be a lot of fun. So who wants to go first in your, or should I start it off first with reading off someone who isn't here?
Well, I think introducing it, I think you should go first for sure.
All right, so I'll go first. Give me a moment to compile my thoughts. I had them in the shower, and it was like, wow, this is great. And I ran over and wrote them. Okay, so most influential player 2020. I picked Gobbins, right? The executor of Horde. Also, longtime Eve player. He's played Eve for as long as I've played Eve. He's played in every major war. He's gone in and out of Eve, but I think he's been pretty active for the last 5 years or so, relatively speaking, in terms of like alliance leadership levels of activity. I will say, without a doubt, if we go back in time, World War B1, that doesn't happen without Vili. I had him as, I think, my most influential for that period. Vili definitely redefined test and set them in motion to where they are now. But similarly to that, World War B2, I believe, doesn't happen without Gobbins. There are so many like weird political machinations that he went through to position Horde where they were, to be able to be friend to Test and friend to Fraternity. And they kind of stayed out of certain conflicts, or they danced around certain other ones. I think Gobbins positioned them very well to take on this fight, which is kind of neat. So I'm going to throw him in my most influential players nominee. In terms of group, and I think this is probably going to be one where I'm a minority on this one. I didn't pick like any major alliance or anything. I picked one corporation named Elitist Ops. The ticker is ISRAD. They used to be in PL. They were the Black Ops SIG of the old Goon Swarm. And they actually disbanded the old Goon Swarm. This is a long time ago. This is we're talking ancient history, when Cartoon disbanded the original Goon Swarm and set them on the path where they are now. But I think the corp itself is not necessarily the most influential group, but it's more of like what they represent, right? You're talking about in World War B1, where the Imperium were losing allies seemingly every day. Their friends were going away. They were very focused on a very strict echo chamber that they had within their leadership. And now you have this complete 180 where they're gaining allies all over the place. You have like Grath coming over to them, Mr. V coming back into the fold, people ditching to join them. And you have you see them welcoming Israel with open arms, right? These were like the forever persona non grata. Like these were the we hate you forever type things. And that mentality is completely gone. And obviously, one of the good things that comes with having Israel is you get to frag yourself a bunch of super carriers probably every week. That Revenant, I think, probably doesn't happen without some institutional knowledge from Israel. In a way, I know it wasn't an Israel op or anything like that. So that's my group. For the moment, it's going to be like that moment where Citadel swapped from abandoned or low power to abandoned. I can go on for this for an hour, but it's the largest like exchange of wealth that I've ever seen happen in this game. We're talking like the group I'm with made a bunch of money. I know Sully made a bunch of money. He was the guy that got all the T2 BPOs. You have individuals getting tens of trillions of ISK from older players. And that thing is still going on now. Like screw what it is. It's also something that it represents as well, right? So it shows that CCP is no longer beholden to promises that they made in the past, and that they're willing to kind of walk back some things. So they're very much unafraid to say, hey, you know, I know this is how it used to be, but it's not how it is anymore. And you can argue if that's good or bad, but you can't argue that box hasn't been opened. In terms of mechanic changes, I went with the resist nerf. I think a lot of people went with the resist nerf. I know Maccloud did. It completely changed so much of the game and we still haven't seen. I don't think we've still seen the end of this, right? So I still think people are still in flux with their meta choices and how they fit their ships and what they do. In terms of game change, I went with resource redistribution. Obviously, it's a thing that's been happening all year. You can't escape it. It's here. It's happening. For better or worse, it has completely redefined a huge portion of the game. And so that's basically it. I'm very wordy. I know that. So you guys don't have to be as wordy. You could just have one word answers. You don't have to back them up. But I did that for you. And I also wanted to buy you guys some time so you could come up with your own list.
Yeah, I'm ready to go next. I'm not going to speak on most influential person because I'm not that good at names and remembering who does what. I'm good at remembering that things happen, but not exactly who did them. So I can't really speak on player or group or moment for that matter too much. But I can definitely speak on game change or mechanics change and game change a little bit. I completely forgot that resistance change happened. But on mechanic change, I'm going to have to go with the introduction of yeet filaments. And that tying together with, I guess, a later change. But the fact that we got these in 2020 and the ability to randomly go out in space to a random place at will with a fleet of 25 or so opened up a lot of possibilities, and it got tied into a bunch of things later in the year as well. So I feel like that was a big influential moment for the path that EVE Online is taking. An actual like game change, because that's like what changes in the games. I'd have to agree with Elise on the distribution, because it is definitely throwing a wrench in the way that we build things and how controlling space and having a bigger footprint in the game is actually a thing where you can't just live in one little area and have everything you need. I think that that's really important, and I think that is very influential in the game and how it's going to go in the future. But those are the two things that I would like to nominate: the adding of the filaments and the mechanics, and the distribution.
I kind of forgot about the filaments too. It kind of feels like they've always been around. I don't know why. And I know that
they initially came out as like a test on Christmas as the Christmas filaments, and that's kind of a play on the Triglavians and whatnot. And they ended up being so popular and so exciting that they just got put into the game. And then now we have yeet filaments, and then that also helped with the drive how the ESS works, drive how we interact with that. It also helped drive getting in and out of Pochvin. And it had a lot of impact on how we play the game today. And then even in this Christmas event, they're testing out the idea of high sec and low sec filaments, which is, I think, really cool. And yeah, so adding those, moving you randomly to space filaments is honestly awesome. But yeah, they came out in like January.
Oh, well said. Well said.
Yeah.
Thanks for that. Who else wants to go next? Maccloud, you want to go next?
Well, I mean, I kind of put together my list a little while ago, so I'm pretty much there, ready to go. My kind of decisions, my kind of choices here were very much based around the idea that this is meant to be most influential, not like best or greatest or anything with a degree of oh damn! We just got some gifted 5 tier 1 subs. Thank you very much, Sharoncy. Anyway,
Poggers, thank you.
Yeah,
thanks for that, and congratulations to all of those who get those cool emotes for being a sub.
So my choices were based on how many people were influenced by either a particular player, a particular group, or a moment, or mechanic change, game change, right? So it wasn't really based on whether you subjectively think that it's good or not, but more along the lines of, has it affected more people? So in that kind of sense, I really can't not say that the one player who's affected more people this year specifically couldn't be anyone other than Villy, really. I know that might rub a few people the wrong way. That's completely fine, because this isn't a subjective kind of like, oh, who's the best player, but like more who's influenced the most people. You can kind of say, to what kind of orders of magnitude. I mean, he's kickstarted the largest nullsec war for a long period of time.
Is it deliberate that you're not mentioning your own corp mate?
How do you mean by that?
That we haven't mentioned your own corp mate as massively influential this year.
Would you care to elaborate?
Brisk Rubar.
Oh, Brisk. Well, I mean, Brisk is
seriously, he's stepped up.
He's not my corp mate, but he's definitely my alliance. He's definitely my alliance mate. He's not in Tigrad, so. But I mean, he's been influential for sure, definitely. But we're talking about who has influenced the most people, and I don't really kind of feel like anybody other than Villy really deserves that particular kind of title. I have a few different sort of choices for, say, group, because a lot of people generally tend to look at group as being player group, right? I just kind of took it as a catch-all for any kind of organization of people, right? And I kind of thought that the CCP's ecosystem team was the group that has affected the most people.
That's cheating. Just kidding. I said that's cheating.
I don't know. They play the game now. So
well, that's true as well. Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Oh, just kidding.
The moment, which is kind of my pick for the moment, the most influential moment in EVE in 2020, was based more around whether it's affected, how many people it's affected, and whether that, I mean, not really whether that was good or not, but I kind of went for the Plex for Good for the Australian bushfires, and the reasoning for that is because of the size of the donation and the way that was sent directly to affect a lot of people. I kind of feel like, even though they're not people who actively play, they're not going to be playing EVE, I think that amount of money probably affected a lot more people than any other moment in EVE. And then the last two, which I'm very much with Elise on this one, which is the 20% resist nerf for the mechanic change. That's just a given. That's completely understandable for me. and the game changes the resource distribution.
Yeah, I also forgot that Plex for Good. I forgot that Australia was on fire at the beginning of this year too. Jesus, this year has been incredibly long.
I was just going to say, you're just trying to remind us that the bushfire was part of 2020, aren't you? I'm on to you.
I mean, you shouldn't forget it, but that money that was donated went to help a lot of people in a lot of very positive ways, and I think I personally think that probably helped more people and affected more people, influenced more people than any other moment in EVE in 2020.
Maccloud donating his gold magnate for that, and Scott Manley coming back to.
Just about to say that.
I was wondering about that. I was wondering about putting Scott Manley as a most influential person, but I don't know.
We'll give him an honorable mention. How about that?
That sounds good to me.
Are you done?
Yep.
Or do you have other categories?
No, I'm done.
All right, cool.
I'm good.
All right. Well, I have. I try to choose things that are like not necessarily the ones that everybody else chose for different reasons, because I often see a different side of EVE than a lot of other people. So, for most influential, I've chosen Fonsui, because that man has spent a ton of hours trying to understand how EVE works, and most specifically how the Abyss works. He's published and has tested for countless of hours a bunch of Abyss fits, and I think that a lot of people who run that content, which is becoming increasingly popular and good for people, have relied on either directly his fits or derivative work of his. And so as far as like just our understanding of the game broadly, Fonsui has been extremely influential in that. Then as far as groups go, I agree that Vili and the war was probably the apex event as far as players go. But I also know that it takes an entire alliance to make a war. So I say that Test Alliance and their option to put aside their security for the sake of content was kind of the most influential group overall. For the moment, for me, the most influential moment to me is the Chapter 3 trailer for EVE, because this represented a change in how CCP delivers content and communicates with us that content. At the beginning of the year, we transitioned to a quadrant-based game release cycle, so that way there'd be basically four. The year would be divided into four themes, and then each theme would have 3 releases that fit within it, and each quadrant receives a trailer at the beginning of it. And so what they established is this kind of pattern that at the very beginning of the month, we get to see this trailer that has all these really exciting things happen, that's really confusing, and there's lots and lots of chatter about it, but we don't understand what any of it means. And then over the course of the next 3 months, we kind of play out all of the different beats within the trailer, until at the end of the trailer, we can look back at it and say like, oh, well, we understand all of the things that are happening now. And at the simultaneously, we have that like conclusion of like, yes, we get it all. And then the realization that actually we're now at the end of this 3-month cycle, and now there's a new 3-month cycle with a new trailer that's coming out next week, and we know nothing, like literally nothing about this. And this was, partially because of COVID and the fact that they didn't need to do major events where they talked about things on panels for hours at a time, although they have kind of replicated that on Twitch. But in general, this represents a shift from CCP to not communicating to us ahead of time what is happening directly, but rather just hinting it and teasing it in these kind of 3-month blocks, which I feel has been really successful. And I feel like the Chapter 3 trailer is kind of still the best example of this, of the 3 that we've received so far. So that's my top moment. Mechanics change. I put in the ESS changes because that took something that was basically kind of a side thing that people only dealt with on a very niche level and turned it into a core gameplay that created an entirely new play style. And the thing I really like about the ESS changes, honestly, on a personal note, is that because of the specific nature of the ESS fights, it actually retroactively justifies a lot of the pirate bonuses that a lot of pirate ships have, because those pirate bonuses end up making them better at fighting in an ESS environment for one reason or another. And that just feels really good for me. So I feel like ESS has finally hit a point in which it probably always should have been, although it does probably require some more tweaks. The game change I have for most influential is probably controversial, but I chose Poshvin. I think that we haven't quite fully consumed or understood the changes that Poshvin represents to our world. There are tons of new mechanics that are involved with it. There are tons of changes to older mechanics and experimentation with mechanics that are related in Poshvin. And I really believe that in 2021 we will look back and say that Poshvin is probably one of the most influential changes of 2020. We just don't see its full impact yet. And that's what I got.
Cool. Yeah. Nice. I know you mentioned Fon Sui for one of your most influential. You very similarly, Arcia, who's on the show but not here this week. She picked someone for her most influential, Elsbeth Rhiannon, who kind of figured out how the invasion system works and the patterns and everything involved in that. So it is cool to see how different people, no matter where they play, have like a different most influential person, and that's very much the crux of Eve, at least to me. But thanks for that. That was really, really well done. Let's see, Suitonia, are you next?
Yeah, sure. So I've gone a little different to most people. So for most influential player, obviously I think like without a doubt, like Billy and Goblins have probably changed the shape of the game the most. But I've gone with Frederick von Hole. In case you don't know him, he's sort of like a really famous like Black Ops like hunter guy. And he's like just in the last 2 years alone, he's killed I think 9 Alliance tournament ships, including a gold magnate, and he's killed like several marshals, several blobs, like several supers, and he's just like it's really funny how he's just kind of like this like big boogeyman for like anyone doing Black Ops or like Alliance tournament ships or things with shiny stuff.
Pedantic correction: Golden Magnate is not an AT ship. It's an Amar championship ship. But carry on.
Yeah, I mean it's still worth like.
Oh yeah, no, it's probably worth more than a lot of AT ships. But technically speaking, it comes from something else. So
AT also stands for Amar tournament.
Yeah,
Amar championship AC. Thank you very much, sir.
But yeah, Frederick von Hole is absolutely prolific in what he does, and he's impressively stayed under the radar, which is, I mean, for at least a lot of people. Obviously, if you have an AT ship and you fly around in it, or a unique of any sort, you definitely are afraid of him. But sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
He's either somebody terrified of, respect, or ignore, one of the three.
Well, I mean, you ignore him at your own peril. For group, I've just gone with Volta. I mean, I'm not doing that to sort of, suck my own corpse dick, but more just like, I know obviously like groups like Test are probably like way more influential in the greater sort of landscape of Eve, but just like Volta's just like changing, like just having a corp change from being like this group that lived in NPC space, basically in Thera, and like morphing into this like alliance that like now holds Sov and now is involved in like no-sec small gang medium scale battles. It's always pretty cool when you see like a group reinvent itself. For the moment, I went with the TD Sin wormhole eviction, which happened this year. Just being like a really big event that happened. I think it's like the biggest wormhole eviction we ever saw, right? With like thousands of players involved, like even multiple nullsec groups getting involved as well, fighting on either of the two sides. For mechanic change, I went with just the surgical strike updates because it just changed basically every single part of Eve. Like it changed the like small scale where I'm part of. It changed like wormhole fights, how wormholes work. It changed nullsec stuff. It completely like shook the game to its core, and yeah, Surgical Strike update was a big one. And for game changer, I actually went with the metaliminal storms because I think they're like really cool as a concept. We now have space weather, and these storms sort of go around space, and they like completely change like how the game is played in some ways, especially the electrical storm, which just stops you from being able to code completely, as well as the gamma storm, which like drastically nerfs remote rep capability, and in the strong effect, it's like almost like non-existent.
Yeah, that's pretty insane.
Yeah, it is wild. I jumped into an electrical storm not too long ago, and I tried to do the cloak trick in my bustard because I was like moving shit around. Did not work. Luckily, no one was there to kill me, but it was quite spooky. Yeah, I actually forgot about the TD Sin eviction. That's a huge, like, there are huge implications there, right? Exuki and their group, they're now part of the initiative. And wormhole space, that whole dynamic has absolutely changed after the TD Sin eviction. So that's shit, I forgot that happened too. It's amazing when you sit back and look at what happened in 2020. It's amazing how much shit happened and how big it all was, and how impactful it all was. I know CCP had they had a quick breakdown of what they thought was the most influential or most impactful moments. CCP Burger talked about Niarja falling, which absolutely, I mean, it literally changed the game's map. Pakvin, like, existing and removing those systems changed the game that's existed for almost 2 decades. I think CCP Convict, or don't know who it was, but someone had mentioned Chabby's birthday. That was a nice remembrance. Oh, Hilmar. Okay, there you go.
Yeah, that was a nice callback.
So that was really nice.
I immediately clipped that and sent it to Chappie. I was like, yay!
Oh, nice.
I've loved that for sure.
Caleb, I don't want to throw you on the spot or anything, but what are yours? Give me a very detailed answer.
Detailed ones.
No. Just high level.
You're gonna get highlights, and then you can ask questions or see chat gets triggered. My personal player of the year is Brisk, pretty much because he stepped up and did stuff with the meta show that was so novel in the media scene, and I have huge respect for that. And what really made me pick him is many people join that scene and they try things and they try to get a lot of other people to come on board and do the work for them. What Brisk has done is done all the work himself. This is commendable. I am surprised that dude has not burned out yet, because he's doing that and he's doing his job and he's running his family, and it's like, when does that guy sleep? Because he's everywhere. And the joking with Fountain Frank and with the monkey, it's just too good. It actually surpasses both in many ways. So he is definitely my number one. Then I have most relevant group to me is some of the stuff that Arc is doing, stepping up and actually trying to promote the RP and the lore stuff, because I really want that to come back in a new and novel way. Of course, Ashterothi can get a little bit of a side mention because I know he's also doing a lot of work on that. Then a favorite moment, or most important moment, was actually 3 moments, or more than that. It was all the wood chipper keep stars. That was the most entertaining thing I've seen for years. The way that the Imperium just kept feeding ships into that thing, it was like glorious, and then culminating with the bubble wrap and all that. That was just amazing. Most important mechanic change, you might be surprised, but I think the most important one is actually the direction that I see the ESS going. It's not entirely finished, so I can't say if it's going to be a dud, but it looks like it's doing exactly the type of stuff that is needed in EVE, in my opinion. And it also has some fun, entertaining aspects to it. The last one is also a little bit out of character, because I hope to see more of it. There was the direction, I think it was Rise's team that did the Need for Speed, where he basically wants to look at balance things that can actually make getting into activity and fights easier without necessarily breaking the overall meta or the economy. I think it's a huge challenge, and I hope that it also leads into things like proper upkeep and solutions to force projection that isn't space aids.
Oh, that's pretty cool. A nice list there, man. Brisk is. I don't want to say I forget about Brisk as well, but I guess I take him for granted. You're absolutely right that the work he does on the meta show, it's not only the meta show, he's everywhere.
Yeah.
And he's everywhere with like a very high level of quality too. It's not just like, oh, I just want my face somewhere type of space fame, but he talks to people. I mean, I did a very small podcast, and Brisk was there, and he was like brought his A game, had the suit and everything. He's absolutely fantastic, and I think he does a really good job with Fountain Frank and that whole thing. He doesn't take himself too seriously, which is something you like to see. I think he's the perfect foil for the Mittani as well. They play off each other really, really well, and I just love to see it.
And let's say that if you don't like the persona and his Imperium affiliation and stuff like that, that's fine. I can understand that. But if you then look at, as you say, all the other things, the way he shows up to stuff for CSM, the way he is approachable for CSM, for the electorate, it's like he is just out there doing all this stuff. And the fact that he single-handedly does all that artwork and planning and stuff for INN, I don't think I've seen a workhorse like that for an age in this game. It's crazy levels, and it's really high quality. So I just think that he needs to get that big kudos, because of course there's other players that have more impact on maybe more players in the game, like Willy and Pickles and all that. But that's, in my opinion, that's obvious. That's something that they've been doing for years and years and years. There's nothing new to this. I saw Brisk maybe 2 years ago when Brisk came in and just canonized himself into the CSM, and then all the stuff that he's done for this game and this game community, not just for the Imperium. I think he needs to get some respect from the non-Imperium guys.
I would say so. Like I said, when it came to Villy and Test and influential, like yes, Villy is extremely influential, but he's extremely influential because of his group. Brisk, like the ways in which Brisk is influential is not because he's an alliance leader, but because he himself is making it happen. That's the big difference, I think.
Exactly.
He has a huge viewing from Imperium. Like, if it wasn't for Imperium, I don't think Metashow would have been watched those degrees. I don't think he would have been influential in those degrees. So, in that distinction, I probably wouldn't agree. As a person who hasn't, for example, my influence doesn't come from any group because I haven't been in a group. I have no affiliation, and I made a video and I got into CSM by myself. Brisk is not that way. I disagree with that.
Oh, I didn't. So I don't want to put you on the spot or anything, because all these guys had a lot of time to prepare for this. But Olmeca, do you have a list of most influential, or do you want to take a breather and then you can put it in later?
I have a list. I always.
Okay, yeah, go for it.
I mean, I'll go with the obvious answer with the with the person and with the moment is Willy, and the moment Willy decides to go to war. Some new things I can add to this is that, well, we all know like cluster shattering war doesn't happen naturally. It takes some decision makers at the higher levels to go and make that decision for content and for fun. And typically it's even at the some sort of, there's a lot of downsides of going to war. Like you get murmurs, and so I think that was a bold decision on his part. And thanks to that decision, we have great months-long content in Eve, and also it's great timing for CCP to get the balance in the ecosystem, to get it together. Like, so there's scarcity, but there's at least war right now, so we can be busy with that. and I would add that he's a great influence on CSM compared to some other people. Like, for example, I've seen some CSM like having not much to contribute when it comes to making like presentations, for example, to CCP, right? Some people have been there for a long time. I think they're out of the new input to give to CCP, and CCP is aware, and I think trying to kind of like make changes so that CSM rotates, for example. So really had a lot new things to say in CSM 14. I think I learned a great deal from him about empire building and also about like capital level or high scale FCing. And I think CCP learned a great degree about how and why wars break out and how the bigger scale fleet skirmishers happen and so on and so forth. So yeah, I would choose really, but also because of his CSM influence.
Are you arguing that Vili taught CCP that scarcity breeds war?
No, I don't. I wouldn't say so.
Sorry.
Probably even I don't agree with
Trying
that.
to trigger Elise.
Yeah.
I think Billy would probably also disagree that scarcity breeds war.
Yeah, I mean, I think scarcity maybe like reduces stagnation. I wouldn't like war is an entirely different thing. It's like it happens in super special circumstances. But I'm talking about like galaxy shattering war where half of the cluster is involved. Anyway, so my group is Imperium. Some good things about to say about this is that, well, if someone talked to me like, okay, like Test and PanFam is going to war against Imperium, and then they're going to have all their supers and mighty umbrella or mighty capital fleet, and I would say, okay, then goons would fold over really fast, and they would just let their regions be burned, like NC and PanFam did before goons, when goons burned their regions. But that totally didn't happen. They are giving a great fight, and I would anticipate that a lot of people are in goons are the kind of people who want to play for asset acquisition. The moment farm stops, they would log off. And looking at the data, I'm kind of getting skeptical about that earlier prediction of mine, because they're not seeing player activities getting lower than other groups, for example, and they're giving a great fight against greater numbers. They're, for the first time in years, I think they're being forced to be creative. Like, remember that boson trap that didn't work? If it worked, it would have been maybe one of the great stories in EVE that all of us would look with envy, right? So I think they're doing great, and also they're very influential. Like I think they have the best propaganda game in the game in EVE, and that's helpful. I think also that's a lot of negative influence as well. I would say I kind of agree with a lot of Vili's reasons why he went into war with goons, and some of them at least. And I would say, for example, a lot of the times I see some horrible game balance opinion or an opinion about CCP being just fed to Imperium members. And then Brisk has been great, but then he's being, I think, used to legitimize all that craziness comes from Mitani. So, but all that is still influence. So I think there's no doubt that Imperium is the most influential. And for the mechanic changes, if we can call ESS changes a mechanic change, because it could be also gameplay, because it's a lot of change. But I would say ESS changes because, well, I was really super invested in them in CSM 14. this has been long in planning, and this was some of the changes that I was able to put forward my best feedback and spend a lot of time folding CCP's implementation across all the CSM 14. I think this was one of the changes that they absorbed the most CSM feedback. But my first CSM meeting, I was sitting at the table and at CCP, and I said, look, I stole like 2 trillions from this group in Eve, and it didn't even flicker. It's like I don't exist. I'm like, not like I don't exist, of course, but like it was balanced, it didn't break goons. I didn't like kill, I didn't influence the amount of roll calls on the field. The game itself
didn't hurt them at all.
Yeah, I didn't hurt them, right? And that was what they kept saying, and I think that was true. That was a minor tax. I said to CCP, look, what if you democratize this kind of thing? What if everyone was able to chip away some small amount, not like 2 trillion a year, but and then there was a great discussion, and I think like a lot of CSM members put forward, why don't you fix ESS? Why don't you fix ESS? And the ESS is just a great idea, but it's a bad implementation. And then I think these changes came from that early discussion in 2014, and that created an entire new gameplay. Like I created an entire new gameplay with this like excavator bushing, except it wasn't accessible for other people. You have to have a lot of accounts and stuff, but now you can just go in one ship and challenge someone's income, and player interaction happens, and that's great. If you ask Meta Show, it isn't, but for me it's great. Anyway, and about gameplay change, I would go a different take with this, and then I would say the Abyssal Tournament PvP stuff, the filaments. I think one of the great ways to, or maybe the only way to get around N+1 problem in Eve is fights in controlled environments. A lot of people take like the single shard to a pedestal and say, it's what defines Eve. I don't know what single shard exactly means, but I think fights in controlled environments where, you can control the two sides, how many people come from how many sides and so on, are great. And again, in CSM 14 meeting 2, Hilmar asked whether we have some wishes, if we had like one wish from CCP. And I said, like a tournament style gameplay, basically. I didn't want to I didn't say A-tier replacement or something. I just said this is a great niche that you're not tapping. This is a lot of games have this kind of, for example, World of Warcraft have arenas, right? A lot of MMOs have this kind of gameplay that you just don't. And why don't you just give it a try, and so on and so forth. And if it was left up to me, I would make it a piece of the sandbox itself. I would say make Citadel Armor Timers tournament style PvP. To me, for example, I ask what does a large group need or strive for? They strive for bigger ships, bigger Titan fleets, and so on, or they strive for more pilots, more people. Why don't they strive for better PvPers? Why don't they grow their own PvP team? And why don't those people have their own influence? That why don't they carve their place in the universe and get famous? And to make it happen, you need tournament style PvP more embedded in the sandbox. But if I'm okay with it being outside the sandbox as well, if we can, and I think this is where this is going. Right now, implementation has been super primitive, but eventually when we get permanent tools for players to create their own custom filaments, so that you can select ship types and ammo and module limitations, and so you get your own tournament, right? And then that's the place where you can create an alliance tournament a year or an alliance tournament every month, right?
Yeah, I know a ton of people would be very very happy to hear that. It is interesting that you chose that as your game change of the year for most influential. Just because of that, I know there's a ton of people that stuck around with EVE Online because of the hyper competitive aspects of the Alliance tournament, and with that gone, it is a bit sad. But yeah, thank you.
This is one of the core arguments of EVE Online within the player base. Is the play? Oh, sorry.
I chose it because I see it as a huge beginning. I think it's just the beginning. What's going to happen with those that kind of gameplay? So I'm very hopeful, and that's why I chose it, because right now the implementation has been, not without problems.
Yeah. So that is pretty cool. Sorry, go for it, Ash.
Yeah, this is one of the biggest major conflicts within the player base of throughout EVE history, right? This is one of the big debates, right? EVE Online conflict as war versus conflict as sport. Should we have tournaments? Should we have gamification in our combat? Or should it be 100% sandbox, open world, and therefore people can do overwhelming, people can use dirty tricks, whatever. And historically, we've seen this argument that conflict as sport has no place in EVE Online because it would detract from EVE as conflict as war. That if people could just queue into some sort of gamified PvP, then no one would roam or actually fight in the real world. And so, if nothing else, one of the biggest things that this filament system does is teach that not only is that not true, that the amount of conflict happening in the world didn't really diminish because of these sorts of things, but if anything, this can function as a structured introduction for players into PvP that could actually increase them and be more interested in then going out and finding conflict in low sec or whatnot. So because the drivers to go into those more dangerous areas are outside of just conflict, I think that EVE as sport has a place within the game, especially as for newer players or for less experienced players to grow into it. And this is an acknowledgement or recognition of that.
Yeah, that is neat. Oh.
I just want to add to what Ashterothi is saying. I think that it's valuable to have combat as sport in EVE Online. It adds a little bit more of an arcadey play, something you can sit down in and play. But I think the resources to do that need to be from the stuff that happens, the ability to build the ships, the ability for materials to be used in that kind of consensual arcadey style cannot be bought. It needs to stay in how it is now, where somebody needs to control space, somebody needs to build the ship, somebody needs to mine the ore. Stuff has to happen in the overworld to support the underworld.
Yeah,
the underworld.
The instance kind of like sport needs to be born of, the sandbox, not be something completely separate to it. Like you can't just literally. Yeah, you can't just literally spawn a ship and modules in order to do the sport-based sort of gameplay. It has to come from the game world as a whole.
Right. And that being said, it hasn't been without its problems. There's been a lot of PvP filament events that have basically digressed into specific builds, very brain dead options, very specific players that are able to kind of build a more basic meta strategy. And there's also been events that were so unpopular that there wasn't enough people to even make the PvP events happen. Like you would queue up and just be queued forever because there's not enough people queued. So it hasn't been without its problems. There's definitely a lot of growing pains in this. But as I said, overall, I think that what we've learned is that there is a place for conflict as sport within EVE Online.
Indeed. Well, that concludes our little list of some of the most influential moments in EVE Online of 2020. Obviously, this is not an exhaustive list. This is just our nominations, and we'll be looking to you guys and within the TIS Discord community. So feel free to hop onto our Discord, leave some YouTube comments as well if you have some influential lists that you want to, or influential people you want to nominate or vote on, etc. We'll be doing a show on the 31st, so not too long from now, actually, to go over kind of collating the results and picking our winners, and hopefully talking to some of the people that were nominated that could be nominated, or people that we could actually speak to. So look forward to that. I want to thank everyone on the show today for giving their insights to very diverse subjects. They're very distinct subjects, the ecosystem, and then kind of the most influential thing. So thanks for hanging in there with us. If you guys got lost somewhere along the way, I had a lot of fun, and I'm sure you did as well. Thanks to everyone. Thanks for our guests. Ashterothi, insights and views are always fun to listen to. Your stream also is out there. Make sure if you are listening now to follow Ashterothi on Twitch. His streams are always a good time. Caleb, you guys know Caleb by now. Just one of the most high level people you can talk to about EVE Online changes. And I always look to him for like a guidance, or not necessarily guidance, but just to see how a change is going to be actually utilized.
Be honest, you just look for investment tips.
I do that too. Thank you for making me rich in that regard as well. Hateless also has a Twitch channel, and I think also a YouTube channel as well. Yeah, definitely a YouTube channel, because I've watched some of his YouTube videos for running burners. So make sure to follow him as well. The things he does, doing EVE Online actions that you would otherwise dismiss, will absolutely blow your mind. Maccloud is always our engineer, and also he had some really good points to chat about today, so I'm glad you were here. Matterall had to unfortunately leave for a little bit. He got worked up over some Titans, and so he had to do a quick walk. Olmeca, thank you for being here. Really appreciate you as a guest. You have your insights are always very interesting. Love to hear from you. Congratulations on the co-pilot. Hopefully he'll be a Rorqual miner, or she will be a Rorqual miner in just a few months here.
It's a boy.
Oh, nice. So he'll probably listen to the show then. Nice. That's just a joke, because we were looking at our demographics earlier, and they're overwhelmingly male. And also, of course, last but not least, Suitonia. Thank you so much for everything. I do like the Frederick von Hole thing. I hope I hope he actually catches someone soon, because I love seeing someone die. I love seeing someone get von Hold. Also, Suitonia also has a Twitch channel. He did an amazing Christmas giveaway that was some of the most fun I've ever watched on a Twitch stream. You guys, if you haven't seen it, you should go back and watch it. It was really well thought out, really well organized. And of course, in classic EVE fashion, one of his like little gift pinatas managed to make it all the way back to Jita completely unscathed. But that was only one of 6. But thank you. You guys should absolutely check out Suitonia. And for myself, I'm sorry I'm not on camera. Something happened to my eye, so it's all like swollen and goofy looking. Don't worry, I didn't get into a fist fight with air, as someone suggested that might have happened, as plausible as that sounds. But I look forward to chatting with you all in the Discord. We'll be in public voice right after this with all these people. And also in the YouTube comments and on the show on the 31st.
I got one last thing, by the way.
Oh, yeah, sure. There's got one last thing.
Yeah, also just to remind everybody, there are 8 days left in the sale, 50% off 3 months of MCT and 3 months of Omega as a pack. Just as a heads up, the MCT, the multi-character certificate, is automatically applied to the account that you get the 3 months of Omega for. So for $50, you get 2 active skill lines and Omega on a single account. So that's a pretty good deal. One of the nice things is that if you have an Omega account, all your characters are Omega. So a lot of you guys have your one character, but then there's 2 other characters on that account that could be skilled into some basic stuff. So 1 month of MCT would be useful for things like PI or trade or any of those kinds of background. Sino alts.
Yeah, I just trade Sino alts on all my accounts as a pain in the ass. Yes, that's great for Sino alts.
Exactly. So this is one of those cool offers, and you have 8 more days to check it out. There is also still the I think the packages from the lunar event, the release of the Japanese, but not nearly as cool in my opinion.
They're awesome and they're pink and they're glorious.
The art team's probably rolling over right now. Pink in space, but I'm glad for it. I'm here for it. But anyways, for Talking Stations, I'm Elise Randolph, and we'll see you guys next time. And we look forward to hearing from you. Have a good one.
Fly fun.